Hey there, welcome to Module 4, the last module in the Peaceful Practices course, A Strong Birth. This is Lesson 1. Let me give you a quick snapshot of what it is we're going to learn. In A Strong Birth, Lesson 1, we're going to look at an overview of American birth and just try to leave with a little better understanding of the culture that you'll be giving birth in if you are in America. And then we're going to look at amazing ways that God has fashioned a woman's body and hopefully help you to marvel at how God has made the body for birth in a way that gives you confidence that's rooted in realities. So let's get going. So when I say a strong birth, am I only speaking about being tough enough to get through labor without getting an epidural? No, I would say that women commonly feel both their weakest, but also their strongest throughout the experience of pregnancy and birth. Your body has been magnificently designed for the healthy, natural process of birth. And for the majority of women, I think it should be expected that they're capable of delivering babies without much chaos or conflict. I think that this should be expected largely because of the marvelous design of women's bodies and the normalcy of birth. We acknowledge as Christians that there are ways in which all of our bodies are broken, and there are times when our bodies betray us, not working as they intend, because things on earth are not as they were originally intended to be, and sin has tainted everything. I would simply argue that this scenario in birth should be expected to be the exception, not the norm, because God has designed a process with both order and with care. Now, birth is not exactly the same in every country of the world. So I want to encourage you to seek to understand the strengths and weaknesses within the birth culture that you are delivering in or serving in. We're going to look a little more closely at the birth culture in America. If you don't live in America and you don't ever intend to live in America, you can fast forward past this. Don't go all the way to the end of the video because this is just a short portion of the video. But I understand that this is specific to those in an American culture. So in American birth, we see two dominant models of care. The first is called the medical management model. It begins with the view that pregnancy and birth are intrinsically difficult and potentially dangerous processes that, when left to occur naturally, frequently result in poor outcomes. This philosophy fuels many interventions and is a prominent philosophy in American birth today. The second model is called the physiologic care model. This model emphasizes low technology strategies and supportive care practices to facilitate childbirth as a biological process. To give you an illustration of what I think is happening in the birth culture of America today, consider this. Sometimes the body is dysfunctional or broken, not functioning in the way it was originally intended to. For example, cancer is when a person's cells begin to divide without stopping, spreading into areas they were never intended to thrive. It's not part of God's original design for cells or for the body. Sometimes, and always under His sovereign care, these cells do dysfunction. With that being said, we don't then fashion all future health physicals to run MRIs to check for tumors, do biopsies on everyone every time, or include x-rays in every appointment. Because though that might prevent cancer and catch more early-stage cancer, if you do get it, along the way it would be invasive, expensive, and it would culminate in causing more harm than good. All medical care should be seeking to find the appropriate balance between doing too little, too late, and too much, too early. We should expect to be treated as healthy individuals up until we are proven to not be so. And I think that this is especially true in birth. Look at these numbers that represent the contrast between the two birth models in American birth. First, I want to show you the numbers of a standalone birth center under the care of midwifery teams in America. At Ina May Gaskin's The Farm, these are the numbers that represent their birth statistics. Induction and augmentation, which means that either your labor was artificially started or artificially helped make progress. 5% of women had artificial help either starting their labor or helping their labor to progress. Under 4% received epidurals, and 1% had C-sections. Now, these are very low numbers, impressive numbers even. But with these numbers, the births without any interventions were 95%. Now let's look at just your average American birth statistics. This takes all American women into consideration. Induction and augmentation rate, 43%. Epidurals, 65%. And C-sections, 33%, giving us less than 2% of birth without interventions. Now, there are a few things to take into consideration. Yes, out-of-hospital birth centers, and oftentimes midwifery care in an out-of-hospital environment, is going to be limited to those with low-risk births. So some of these numbers, of course, can be affected and skewed a little bit by some numbers like that, but not this much and not this many. So these are far ends of the scale, but they tell us something. What I want you to see here in these numbers is that it is far less likely that God's design for birth and your bodies is what's failing you. It's far less likely that simply the effects of sin and the fall on our bodies gives us these high of numbers for interventions. And it's far more likely that your healthcare model is failing you. And though this isn't the best news in the world if you are actually giving birth, say, in America with a typical hospital practice, it's important to understand, because I want to build your confidence that a low intervention birth is possible. I want you to see that you should not expect that you will have a C-section. Yes, if you don't make any decisions and you simply step on the American birth model escalator, there's a 1 in 3 chance you will end up with a C-section. But that is not because birth is so unlikely without one. So my hope is that you would find greater confidence in God's design for birth, that you would realize that maybe some of your fears about birth say more about our birth culture than they do about birth as a whole. On the topic of building your confidence, let's look more closely at God's design of the body for birth. So during pregnancy, your body adjusts in some pretty miraculous ways by God's design to care for not just you, but your baby. I want you to feel confident and empowered when you look at how very precise this design is. So let's marvel together at some of these things, shall we? When you are pregnant, you pump about 50% more blood through your body. Now, to compensate for this, your heart enlarges to accommodate that extra blood, and the walls of the ventricles actually get thicker. So an enlarged heart can sound a little scary, right? I thought you're trying to build my confidence in God's design here. Well, don't worry. There is something called relaxin in your body when you're pregnant that relaxes all the tendons so that they can be supple and stretchy and grow and help your body to expand with ease. This relaxin also shows up, guess where? In your heart, to help your heart because it relaxes those arteries, which means that the heart beats more often to pump that extra blood, but it doesn't have to work as hard with each beat as you would expect that it would. Your body starts preparing your breasts for milk production just days after, not birth, but conception. Isn't that marvelous? How purposeful is that? How about the fact that God fashioned your reproductive system, giving you all of the eggs you would have for a lifetime, of which some would develop, and one in particular, into the baby you're currently carrying. And he did that, wait a minute, while you were still in utero. Let's remember our hormones. You remember that hormone cocktail, that divine cocktail of hormones that aids you and the baby all the way through labor? Let's just review that for a minute. Remember, first there was oxytocin, which is stoked by the feelings of love and demands a loving, safe, supportive environment for mom, dad, and baby. It tells your body to have contractions. And remember those endorphins to ease your discomfort. But not only that, they're the brain to your contractions, telling them how long, strong, and close together they should be. And as if that's not enough, remember endorphins heighten your intuition, that immeasurable ability to use more than your five senses for reactive decision making. A total wow factor and a huge asset to you during labor as you react instinctively. And then don't forget that glorious Hulk hormone, catecholamines, that give you extra strength and awareness for delivery at the end of your labor. And then the ever so important muscle, the largest muscle in the human body, the uterus. Y'all, your uterus is literally a God-fashioned, perfect home for your baby from implantation all the way till 9 months later during birth. Listen, my son can't even keep his turtle tank a safe environment for a reptile. Meanwhile, you're doing basically nothing except walking around, sleeping, eating, same as you usually do. And God keeps your baby safe in a home within a home. It is the only organ that grows another organ, your placenta, but only for a short amount of time, and then at birth releases it at the perfect time after delivering your baby without any side effects. During pregnancy, your uterus grows to 500 times its original size and then contracts back down over about 6 weeks during your postpartum stage. That's when you'll see all the shedding of the lining that's accumulated throughout the pregnancy, making a safe environment for your baby to grow, which then in postpartum will cause you to bleed for those weeks following birth. It's shedding that lining that was such a nurturing environment for your baby to grow. I want to show you guys some pictures because, again, I'm very visual and I want you to have a visual understanding of what's going on in your body. These are included in your class. You can print them. I would encourage you to print them and hang them up in your labor room so that you can quickly access visual reminders of what your body's doing and how your body is shaped. In the first picture on the left, you'll see a baby head down in the pelvis. You'll see that tunnel-like object is the cervix that is not thinned or effaced. You see the uterus like a giant balloon that baby is resting in, and the placenta growing in the wall of the uterus. And the picture on your right, again, just a very simple visual diagram. I want you to see where the uterus and the cervix are in your body, and then where the diaphragm is, that place that you're going to be breathing all that extra space into during those slow breaths of your contractions. A couple more pictures. All right. These two pictures show you what the uterus looks like, particularly its muscles. So the picture on the left shows you the inner layer. There are two layers of muscles, essentially, making up the uterus. The inner layer, to the left, is circular muscles like rings that widen as the ribbons pull them up, dilating you. Whereas the outer layer of vertical muscles on the right are like those long ribbons that shorten as they contract. I have again, visual practice that I've recorded for you guys, and it's on my YouTube page, that shows you another visual example of how contractions work and how the uterus works. I really want you to understand this clearly. This will really serve you when you're feeling your body contract. It won't be just a foreign feeling with an unknown purpose of intensity. You will know why you're feeling that intensity, what it's doing in your body, and you can close your eyes, calm your body, and visualize it right alongside the actual experience. So again, you have an outer layer of muscles that are long, vertical like ribbons, and those are active muscles that shorten during contractions. They're contracting, they're shortening. And ideally, if your body's calm and rested, then that inner layer of circular muscles will be a passive muscle. They will not be tensed up in the same way, therefore easily widening or dilating from the pulling up of those ribbons. Now, if you are tense, then both of those muscles potentially can be contracted, working against one another. Similarly to when you are flexing a bicep and the tricep is not flexed to the same degree. And if it does, then you get a muscle cramp, causing more pain and all, again, being ineffective. And so what we really are going for here is that every time you have a contraction, we're getting the most bang for our buck. We want a contraction to be effective. Because if it's effective, your uterus can work the way it's intended to because your muscles are hydrated, you're breathing appropriately, your body is calm, then it is capable of delivering your baby. And if your uterus is able to do what it's intended to do effectively with each contraction, then guess what you get? Fewer contractions, i.e. a shorter labor. Which, isn't that what everybody really wants? I would encourage you to do as much study as you reasonably can to understand the uterus. It is an amazing muscle, and it will serve your body well. I oftentimes reference these times in the essentially dark ages of obstetrics. In the 40s and 50s, there was something called twilight sleep, where moms would be essentially drugged and wouldn't be fully aware of what was going on in their labor. They would simply be in hospitals, and they would be under a kind of twilight sleep. And their arms and their hands would be buckled down, and they would just check on them occasionally. And when baby was crowning, they would deliver baby. The point I make here is that your uterus, in that scenario, your uterus is capable of delivering your baby. Yes, work with your body, move as needed, but I would encourage you not to think of labor as something that you have to do all on your own, that if you don't move in the right way, your body won't be able to deliver your baby. Remember what an asset your uterus is to you. And your goal is to kind of work with and get out of the way so that that muscle, you can work with that muscle to deliver your baby and get out of the way by relaxing so that that muscle can do its work to gently push your baby down and out. It's capable of doing that. It's made to be a very effective tool to deliver your baby. Your body is a miraculously designed space that should lead you to great worship of the maker of it, and therefore great comfort in its design and order. If you're a birth worker, it's your job to remind mom of this, building her confidence. If you're a dad, educate yourself on birth as much as possible so that you are sincerely, not faking it, but actually confident in that space. Mom, dad, study up to help familiarize yourself with what it is you're feeling during birth. Your body is doing amazing, fruitful things, and you have a very good reason to trust the process. I hope you feel emboldened as you examine the work of art that is birth.